Good morning and welcome to Zen Fits here in Blackstone, Virginia, the center of the world. But then you too are at the center of the world. I'll get into that later. Beautiful day here in Blackstone. Title of today's talk is Rosemary's Baby Revisited. Rosemary's Baby Revisited. Did you ever see Rosemary's Baby? The movie came out in the 60s. And it rather made an impression on on my family because a friend of ours took us to see Rosemary's Baby when Tilly was pregnant in the mid-60s, and it horrified her because you should never take a pregnant woman to see Rosemary's Baby. Just to remind you of what the movie was about, it was about Rosemary's baby was the baby born by the Rosemary was impregnated by the devil and had Rosemary's baby, and it was kind of like a psycho movie, because they'd been birthed to this Minotaur, so this horror, what have we done? What have I done? And ironically, I really hadn't even connected this before, but when that first baby was born, it was born stillborn. It was deformed. It had not developed, but it was taken to term. But it was born. It was stillborn. But then we later had two beautiful children. But it's just interesting how these two dots connected. And so why am I bringing this up again? Because in my writing this morning on Facebook, got into, I was corresponding with an Englishman, and he said, the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans, and I took issue with that. Because that false equivalency, that is what's called false equivalency, and it really started back with the when news, our delivery system, our media delivery system, went from network, the big three, ABC, NBC, CBS, to cable and Fox. Now, with cable, with the networks, the reality that was presented to the viewer was really one objective world with three different aspects or different flavors. So we had ABC, NBC, CBS, and these were all reporting on the same world, the same viewpoint, with different flavors. You like the different personalities. Walt Cronkite, Huntley Brinkley. So, we liked our anchor. But the world was the same viewpoint, and it was a secular viewpoint. The world in the 50s and 60s was objective, and we all assumed we are seeing the same world. And then the news reported on the variations in that world, but the world out there was not questioned or disputed. But with in science and in politics, suddenly the objective world was not certain. In quantum, it was discovered that the electron, whether it was a wave or a noun, was determined by the observer. It depended on how you looked at it, or it depended on your experience. Your perception would change the world. Your experiment would change the electron, literally, from being a wave to a particle. It wasn't a different viewpoint. You changed. In other words, your perception changes the reality you perceived. And this is very common because if you look at the news, whenever a camera goes, well, look at yourself. If somebody were standing here looking at me, photographing me, it would most likely change the way I'm speaking to you. I would be, you're talking to somebody and a third party comes into the room and stands there and looks at you. Doesn't that change your relationship? Now you're suddenly objectified by this other viewer, you see. And you say, well, what is he thinking? Suddenly you see I'm being objectified by somebody else. Where before, this is why lovers want to be alone. They've got to find some privacy where they can be one, where each can be the other. But you introduce a third party and it breaks it up. So the same way with quantum, when you introduce it, you can, but this is only on the subatomic level that this works. But is that true? Doesn't it work on above the which is the reality we perceive, is that which is above the subatomic level? In other words, we don't see atoms and molecules and all that. But if you look at a chair, you can break it down into atoms and molecules. But anyway, the laws of the subatomic world suddenly were different from the laws of the waking world. But is that true? So I hope I'm not digressing too far, but I'm trying to get to the point that suddenly in the 60s, and then actually with the creation of cable and Fox, the objective worldview became questioned, and you had two realities juxtaposed to each other. There's a split screen. So on cable, you'd get creation, design, and evolution sitting at the same table, arguing as if they were on the same playing field. So reality became like a soccer game where you have the left's view of reality and the right's view of reality, and then you put them together and you ask the viewer to choose. Remember when they wanted to put creation design into science classes? Oh, let the students choose which is true. Let the students decide. Because so it was a false equivalency. You can't put religion next to science and say which one is true. They're not on the same playing field. It's kind of like trying to clap like this, you see. You can't put religion and science, religion and secularism on the same playing field and have them compete for the truth. They don't hit each other, you see. They're two different realities, like the wave and the particle. So whether the electron is a wave, which means energy, not located, it's everywhere, or a particle, which is located on a map at a spot. A particle is located in space-time. There it is, you see. There it is. But you can't locate a wave. You see, the wave is an energy pulse. So you can't compare them. And yet whether it's the wave or the particle depends upon your perception, how you look at it. Your consciousness decides which one it is. So now we're looking at left and right, Republicans and Democrats, and people say, well, they're both wrong. If you fault the Republicans, the GOP for something, well, they'll say, well, the Democrats are doing it too. That's comparing them on the same field. So Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary's Baby was a metaphor for creating This is the way I'm interpreting it. The Rosemary's Baby was what you produce when you mixed science and religion, or the state and the church. The state and the church are two different realities, two different worldviews, and they are not compatible. England went through that. We're still going through it. England went through several hundred years of religious wars, starting with Henry VIII, when he said, well, to hell with the Pope, he won't let me remarry. He won't let me remarry, so I'm just going to take over I'll be the head of the church in England. So now the king became the head of the church and the state. Well, then the Protestants came up and says, well, the hell with that. God, you see, the king is not God. God is God. So down with the king, down with the king. And that started the religious wars. Secularism or Protestantism versus the monarchy and the church and state. And isn't that the same thing going on right now? You've got the liberal democracy, the Democrats, and liberalism is basically the politics of secularism, which is truth is evidentially based. And truth is determined by the majority of scientists who agree that the theory works. But if the theory stops working, well, then you change the theory, you see. So it's the scientists at the end of the day, they may be arguing about which theory is the most useful. At the end of the day, they'll go home and they'll go out to the pub and have a beer. But that's not true today. When the politicians argue about what is the useful theory, they're not arguing about the same thing. One of them is arguing about certainty, absolute truth. The other one is arguing about relative truth, relative certainty. These two don't meet. One is a religious view, the other is a secular view. But our political system in America, you see, has become a religious war, just like the ones in England, where you have the monarchists on one side who want church and state to be one, and the secularists on the other side who want to keep church and state separate. So one side, the church-state side, it says truth is what's in the Bible or in the original Constitution. If civil rights wasn't in the Constitution originally, well, then you don't have any. It's been added, you see. So the source of truth for the church state is certain, and it's like the Pope, infallible. Infallible truth, the anchor. And on the left, you see, with the Democrats, well, truth is relative to its usefulness. If it's no longer useful, change it. You see the difference? And these don't meet. But in today's politics, we have Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary's Baby is a society that is produced when you have church and state as one, which is Iran. Or any other system where you have clerics and politicians sitting in the pulpit. Anyway, watch Rosemary's Baby. Get the get the bejeebies scared out of you. It should, because this is serious, folks. We don't want to create Rosemary's Baby, which is exactly what the religious right, which is now the whole party, it's just that the religion is disguised as secularism, but it's really religion. And that's why Trump is so powerful, because he's the Pope. You see, he's the king who is head of both church and state. He combines them both in his person. And that makes him a cult. Anyway, thanks for dropping in. See you next time.